Hi everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel Dr. Sreenivas Medical Concepts and my FB page Dr. Sreenivas Concepts. This is Dr. Sreenivas, neurologist from Andhra Pradesh, India. I am also the medical author of the book Focused Neurology. Today we are going to talk about a very interesting topic, the localization of generalized weakness. If a person presents with generalized weakness, how are we going to localize it? When a person presents with generalized weakness, the lesion could be at the level of the spinal cord, or it could be at the level of the peripheral nerve, or it could be at the level of the neuromuscular junction, and finally muscle. So spinal cord, peripheral nerve, neuromuscular junction, or muscle can be involved. So how are we going to localize it? If the lesion is in the spinal cord, and if the lesion is only partial and incomplete lesion, the corticospinal tract gets affected, and therefore there will be preferential involvement of the corticospinal tract innervated muscles. The distal muscles will be preferentially affected and they will be weak. Since it's a corticospinal tract lesion, the corticospinal tracts get involved in a spinal cord, the reflexes are brisk. Spinal cord lesion produces a definite and discrete sensory loss. So person is able to appreciate sensations, but at one particular point of time, at one particular place of time below which he will lose all the sensations. A definite discrete sensory level, if it is seen, it is spinal cord lesion. And the sphincters, the bladder, bowel, everything, the fibers run in the spinal cord. And therefore, if the spinal cord gets affected, there could be sphincter disturbances. So, four important points if there is a spinal cord lesion. One, about motor power. The weakness will be of the corticospinal tract innervated muscles if the lesion is incomplete. The sensations are abnormal, wherein we have a definite, discrete, horizontal sensory loss. The reflexes are brisk because it's a corticospinal tract lesion, and there are sphincter disturbances, bowel and bladder disturbances. When it comes to peripheral nerve, the weakness is seen more in the distal muscles than the proximal muscles. Likewise, in the sensations also, there is more sensory loss in the distal parts than the proximal parts. We call that as a glove and stocking type of sensory loss. We all know that we wear gloves, especially gloves are worn when they play cricket, and stockings, the nurses wear socks till the level of the knees. So this is known as a glove and stocking type of sensory loss. We especially see this with axonal type of peripheral neuropathy. The axonal type of peripheral neuropathy is a length dependent neuropathy. So the lengthier nerves get affected first, the distal parts of the lengthiest nerves get affected first, followed by the other nerves which become less and progressively less and less lengthier. So that the lengthiest nerves in the human body are those of the lower extremities, followed by the upper extremities. So the distalmost parts of the lower extremities get affected, that is the foot gets affected, then slowly it ascends and goes up to the level of the knees. The moment the sensory loss touches the knees, the fingertips should get affected because they become of equal length. These are length dependent neuropathies, axonal type of neuropathy, because once it gets affected, the nutrition has to travel a long distance. So when the nutrition gets affected, the traveling part gets affected, the distalmost parts get affected first, then progressively more and more proximal parts get affected first. So it is a distal type of sensory loss, the glove and stocking type of sensory loss. Since the peripheral nerves are affected per se, the deep tendon reflexes are decreased. And they are nerves, they are peripheral. So sphincters are spared. Peripheral nerves are the nerves which come out from the spinal cord as peripheral nerves, and from the intracranial portion as the cranial nerves from 3 to 12. We don't consider first and second as peripheral nerves because they are actually the extensions of the central nervous system. So the 3rd to 12th cranial nerves and the peripheral nerves coming out of the spinal cord getting affected, we call that as peripheral neuropathy. The third is the neuromuscular junction. Here, there is a very important characteristic feature of a neuromuscular junction disorder: weakness. It sometimes can even pathognomonic. We call that as fatigability. Initially, they are able to perform a certain amount of work, but as the time progresses, the performance of the work gets deteriorated because the muscles get weakened with the passage of time. Example, in the initial part, when the person is afresh, when he is asked to chew a tough portion of edible item like chicken, initially he chews well. But with the passage of time, he develops difficulty in chewing chicken, and at one point of time he is not able to chew the chicken at all. If that is the kind of history which is forthcoming, then we should always suspect myasthenia gravis. Fatigability, a very characteristic feature of muscle weakness, and usually here the proximal muscles are involved in a myasthenia gravis or a neuromuscular junction disorder. Since it's an NNJ disorder, the deep tendon reflexes are normal, the sensations are normal. Another very interesting point is that here it affects especially the levator palpebrae superioris, a muscle which is used very frequently, and therefore they usually present with ptosis. A person presenting with ptosis, always we need to suspect myasthenia gravis. It also affects the extraocular movements, so they'll have double vision. Double vision, drooping of the eyelid, always suspect myasthenia gravis. But here again, we need to understand a certain concept. There could be confusion with the third nerve palsy also. Third nerve also causes double vision and drooping of the eyelid, that is ptosis. So how are we going to differentiate if a person comes with double vision and drooping of the eyelid, whether it is a myasthenia gravis on one side, a neuromuscular junction disorder, or a third nerve palsy? The third nerve usually affects the pupil also, but myasthenia gravis spares the pupil completely, because myasthenia gravis is a neuromuscular junction disorder of skeletal muscle, not smooth muscle, and pupil is a smooth muscle. So double vision and drooping of the eyelid, but if the pupil is perfectly normal, if it is spared, if it is not affected, it is myasthenia gravis. Yeah, finally we have myopathy, the involvement of the muscles. Myopathy has got a predilection to involve the proximal muscles, unlike peripheral neuropathy, which has got a predilection to involve the distal muscles. So the proximal muscles are involved, they have difficulty in getting up from the squatting to the standing position. Because to get up from squatting to standing position, we need to use our proximal muscles. Since they are weak, they are not able to get up from squatting to standing position. In fact, they climb on themselves and then try to get up. Very characteristic. In fact, we see this in Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, what we call as Gover's side. So proximal muscles are affected more than distal muscles. Gover's side, characteristic of myopathy. The deep tendon reflexes are normal again because it's a myopathy. The sensations are normal again because it's a purely muscular disorder, so sensations are normal. There are certain characteristic features of Duchenne muscular dystrophy and inclusion body myositis. Duchenne muscular dystrophy, along with the weakness of the proximal muscles, they also have calf muscle hypertrophy, and therefore they have plantar flexion. So if you see in a boy a Gover's sign proximal muscle weakness with calf muscle hypertrophy and plantar flexion, it is almost pathognomonic of Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. And inclusion body myositis, there's a peculiarity for inclusion body myositis because it preferentially affects the quadriceps muscle found in the lower limbs, and therefore quadriceps muscle, if it gets affected, they are not able to extend the knee. So the characteristic presentation will be buckling of the knee. So when they walk, when they buckle, that means the quadriceps is affected, extension of the knee is affected. We need to suspect the inclusion body myositis. So these are all the important areas where there could be the lesion of which could lead to generalized weakness. Myopathy, spinal cord, peripheral neuropathy, the neuromuscular junction disorder, myasthenia gravis, and myopathy. So if we go systematically, we'll be able to localize the lesion. I hope you have enjoyed listening to my lecture. If you have any suggestions or comments, kindly post onto my YouTube channel. But please like and subscribe my YouTube channel, Dr. Sreenivas Medical Concepts, and my other page, Dr. Sreenivas Concepts. Thank you. Bye.